Well, folks, in today's video, we're going to be working on this 1950s era Gilbert Ho Lackawanna F3. This was a locomotive which was sent in a few months ago from a gentleman by the name of Peter Wacko, and from what I can tell, this locomotive has not run for probably at least a couple decades. If you look on the bottom here, you can see that everything is quite gummed up, and when we tried to test this thing, it failed to start. Apparently, it was found in a dumpster, so you can tell the conditions of it. Clearly not the greatest, but today I want to try taking this thing apart and seeing if we can get it going again. The motor was humming, so hopefully the coils are still good, and maybe with a little bit of cleaning here and there and some fresh oil, it might just spring back to life. So we'll take it over to the track just for the sake of it. I'll show you all what it's doing right now, and then we'll disassemble it and see if we can get it turning over for probably the first time in maybe 20 years. I don't know. Let's go try it out. So here's what seems to be the issue with this thing. If we get it all set up on the track here and give it some power, you'll see we got a working headlight, and you can hear the motors humming. We've also got high current draw, which I'm just going to cut the power to so we don't burn up the coils. Maybe this engine would like that, but I personally don't want to see it burn up. So we'll take it back over to the workbench and see if we can get it unseized. The good news is that since the motor is humming, we know it's getting power, so the electrical system is probably in good shape. I think we've just got a case where something's been sitting for so long, everything has just become a bit gummed up and no longer wants to rotate. Now, I don't recall taking one of these diesels apart. I have worked on some Gilbert Ho, but from what I can tell, it seems to be a somewhat similar design to Varney of the same era, so we'll just try removing this center screw and hopefully the whole drive system will drop out. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Got a nice large weight on the front here. Pretty neat design. Well, it's actually not entirely seized. Everything is quite stiff, but it's not entirely locked up, so that's good to see. So then I guess at this point we'll just open up these trucks and just try to clean out a lot of the crud, which I think might be preventing this from turning over properly. I'm sure the motor itself could probably use a little bit of servicing as well, so we'll remove both of these bottom screws here. We'll just kind of see what sorts of nightmares await us on the other side. Actually doesn't look that bad. Uh-oh, this is not good. Somebody used steel wool on their track. This is the exact reason you never want to clean your tracks using steel wool. It will slowly work its way into the motor, and if it gets into the commutator or any of these other parts, it can cause some pretty serious issues. You know, if it gets in those gaps, it can burn up and just lock things up, which might further explain why maybe this thing wasn't able to turn over under its own power. Let's get the front truck all freed up here, and then we can throw a lot of these parts in the ultrasonic parts cleaner, which I think is going to do a great deal of service to try to get a lot of this crud out of here. And just look at all that nastiness right there. I don't know if I'd call this the worst grease I've ever seen, but it would certainly make the top 10. So while those parts get treated in the ultrasonic cleaner, I think we'll focus our attention in on the motor. And this actually doesn't look that bad. It seems to be turning pretty well, so I think it's really just going to be a matter of cleaning all the various parts. We'll start by removing all of the metal from the steel wool. And now we'll just have a quick gander through the commutator. Alright, let's see if the motor will start. Yeah, no question about it. I think maybe it has to go through a bit of a break-in period, but other than that, it seems to be turning over very well. Just as I'm cleaning up the shell, I'm really noticing that the motor's been slinging oil in here, and as a result, there's all this nasty stuff in here, which I want to get out. But the good news is one of the step ladders was somehow caught by the oil, and you know, we could just go and reattach that somewhere, so that's a positive. Just went and fished the basket out of the ultrasonic parts cleaner, and you know, it looks like it did a pretty decent job. Well, after giving all this stuff some time to dry, I think we can slowly start to put this whole powertrain back together. I really hope I can remember how it all went back together, but we'll just go at it one piece at a time, and I think it should all click together. I also cleaned up some of these metal components and added a little bit of oil, so hopefully they'll conduct power a little bit better than they did before. Anyways, we'll insert these two parts right here, and then we'll, I guess, throw in the screws. I believe this was the correct tapered screw. Everything's rotating quite nicely there. I'm happy to see it. And now we've just got to do a little bit of soldering. Now this is sort of a trick part right here, so we're going to do this before attaching it so I don't burn up all the plastic here. Got to be really careful not to get any solder within the threads. I'll get the side frames back on here. Now the axles do have to go into those little divots, so we'll just kind of stretch that around there. Now it would be really nice to add some sort of a coupler to this thing. It looks like they unfortunately decided to use rivets, so I'm going to have to try to find a nut and bolt to fix that up, but I don't think it's going to be that difficult. Okay, well, I got all of this apart, so we'll throw a new coupler in it. I got a nice metal American-made one. It's just, you can tell that there was some craftsmanship put into this locomotive. I know by today's standards, it's, you know, not the fanciest thing out there, but I want to, you know, throw some decent parts in it. So we'll just try to get this all back together here. Well, that looks pretty good right there if you ask me. I think we'll attempt to start it now and see if we can clean up those wheels a bit. Well, that's bad. I must have wired something wrong. Or maybe not. That's more like it. That's great. Well, I think those are looking a heck of a lot better. Let's throw the shell on this thing and take it to the track. Alright, let's take this thing over to the track and see if she'll run. Okay, well, moment of truth here. I feel pretty confident that it's gonna start. I just hope it runs okay, because the motor was pulling a lot of amps up on the bench. Maybe it just needs to break in. I don't know, let's try giving it some power here. And, oh, that's weird. The current draw is still pretty low. You can hear something humming very faintly, but the current draw is low, so I don't think that the motor is stuck. The headlight's also not working, so guessing maybe I wired something wrong, but it worked okay on the bench. Everything appears to be where it should. Same issue. I'm thinking we've got some kind of a ground issue here. Well, it's now the next day. I was up pretty late last night trying to get this thing running right, and it seems to be doing a lot better, so I'll show you what I did. First of all, I rerouted this wire right here straight to the body instead of this bolt. I don't know why it wasn't like that right away. This is really how I should have done it earlier, but either way, it's just a much more solid connection. And as for the other wire, I routed that back to the truck, which is how it was before. I'd kind of thought that routing it to this piece of metal, since it's a good ground, would be okay, just because I didn't really want that wire getting caught up with anything down here, but I just don't know if that's a reliable connection. So that's all sorted out. I also added tension to all of the contact wipers because they were not doing a very good job at pressing down on the wheels properly anymore. So a little bit more tension, this thing is doing a lot better. You can see it's super responsive. It's not stuttering at all. The headlight's nice and bright. It's got a pretty good top end speed too. It's not the quietest locomotive out there. None of these engines from that era really are, but I'm just happy to see that it's running half decent. So I think at this point we'll throw the shell back on it, put the side frames back on it, and actually try to haul some cargo, because another thing too, the current draw is not that bad, so I'm very happy to see that. Okay, shell's back on. I think this thing is all ready to go pick up some cars. Let's just have a bit of a check-in here on the low speed. Yeah, that seems to be where it kicks out, but for what it is, that's actually not that bad. Current draw is in pretty good check too. Very impressed to see that. Well folks, that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed. I'm overall very happy with the results. It might not be the quietest locomotive out there, but at least it's running consistently now, and the current draw is not too high, which for an engine which probably sat for a couple decades and was found in a dumpster, I think is quite impressive. Anyways, just before I finish this off, I just want to give a quick thanks to Peter Wacko for sending this locomotive all the way from California to be fixed. I know it was a bit of a challenge to repair, but I'm always up for that kind of thing, and I think the results kind of speak for themselves as a half-decent runner. Anyways, that'll be it for today's video. I want to thank you all so much for watching.